So Apple just posted this absolutely record-shattering $109.4 billion quarter. I mean, they are selling hardware at a pace that just kind of defies gravity right now.
Oh, completely. It's really being driven by this, like, absolute renaissance in Mac sales.
Right. And by all traditional metrics, you'd look at this and think it's just a historic victory lap for a $5 trillion company.
Yeah, you really would.
But, and this is the crazy part, the moment the market actually digested these numbers, Apple's stock dropped over 6% in extended trading.
Which is a huge reaction.
It is. So today, we're taking a look at the cracks in this massive foundation. Welcome to all of you, our internet audience, to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a huge stack of sources covering Apple's Q3 2026 earnings call.
And it is a massive stack of sources today.
So true. And we're really catching the company at this fascinating crossroads. They are navigating these severe structural supply chain storms, right as Tim Cook prepares to hand the CEO title over to John Ternus.
Yeah, but real quick, before we jump into the numbers, we want to remind you, all the information and analysis we discuss here is just to help everyone better understand the market and is not investment advice. Investing involves risks, so be sure to do your own homework before entering the market or consult a professional financial advisor.
Exactly. Always do your homework. But man, we have a lot of ground to cover today. We need to dissect this massive revenue beat, decode some of these somewhat alarming warnings about a supply chain crisis, and analyze this whole architectural shift happening with their AI strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through.
Let's start with just the sheer scale of this June quarter. I mean, hitting $109.4 billion in revenue, that represents a 16% jump year over year.
Which is unheard of for a company that size.
Right. And they posted an earnings per share of $2.02. Both of those figures just comfortably crushed Wall Street's expectations.
They did, and the underlying engine here is, well, it's completely hardware-driven. If you look at the breakdown in the sources, the iPhone 17 supercycle is performing exactly as designed.
Yeah, pulling in, what was it, $54.2 billion?
Yeah. Yep, $54.2 billion. That's a 22% increase right there. But the real structural anomaly in these financials, it actually isn't the phone, it's the Mac.
The Mac.
Yeah, Mac revenue surged 29% to $10.3 billion.
That jump is just wild to me. I mean, the Mac has been around for decades. You generally expect mature product lines to post, single-digit incremental growth.
Exactly, like maybe a few percent a year.
Right. A 29% spike is the kind of metric you see from a startup, not this veteran hardware division. So looking at the breakdown, it seems the catalyst here is the new MacBook Neo.
Yeah, the Neo is fascinating. Apple identified this massive gap in the entry-level market, and they filled it with a device that's built entirely around older, highly optimized iPhone silicon architectures.
Which is so smart.
It really is.
Yeah.
By repurposing that mobile chip design for a laptop form factor, they managed to drastically lower the retail cost. But they did it without, detonating their profit margins.
And keeping gross margins above 50% on a budget-friendly laptop is a serious feat of financial engineering.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult.
Usually when a hardware company drops the retail price to chase market share, the cost of manufacturing just eats their profitability alive. Yet, Apple reported a gross margin of 50.1%.
They did?
But digging into the sources, that number is actually carrying a bit of an asterisk.
A rather significant asterisk, actually. So for our listeners, gross margin is basically the percentage of revenue you keep after paying the direct costs of making the product.
Right, the basic profitability of the hardware itself.
Exactly. And that 50.1% figure, it was artificially inflated by a positive tariff refund.
Ah.
Yeah, they basically received this one-time rebate on import duties that they had previously paid.
I noticed that buried in the footnotes. It essentially injected like a phantom 11 cents into their earnings per share and padded that gross margin by a full 2 percentage points.
Exactly, which means if you strip away that one-time accounting benefit and look purely at the operational margins of selling the hardware, Apple basically just hit Wall Street's baseline expectations.
They didn't blow the roof off the underlying profitability.
Nope. And that really explains the friction we saw in the stock price. Investors were looking past that shiny headline revenue and zeroing in on the operational reality.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But, the tariff refund wasn't the only crack in the paint here.
It's far from it.
The services division, which is huge, that includes the App Store, Apple Music, iCloud, They actually missed the mark. I mean, they hit a record $30.7 billion, crossing 1.5 billion paid subscriptions globally. But Wall Street had modeled for 31.2 billion.
Yeah, and missing by $500 million in your highest margin division, that is going to trigger alarm bells.
Definitely.
The earnings call highlighted this distinct softness in mobile gaming specifically. Consumers simply aren't spending as much on in-app purchases and microtransactions as they historically have.
Which is a huge revenue driver for them. Add that to the systemic changes they've had to make to the App Store business model, right?
Oh, the European regulation.
Yeah. With European regulators forcing Apple to allow alternative billing systems and third-party app stores, that historical 30% revenue cut they used to enjoy unchallenged, it's slowly being eroded.
It really is. The European regulatory pressure is fundamentally altering the unit economics of the App Store. And when your most reliable growth engines start sputtering like that, the market expects you to make up that ground elsewhere.
Usually in major international markets.
Yeah.
Like Greater China.
Exactly. And China is a fascinating battleground right now.
For sure. The region brought in $18.8 billion. From a purely historical perspective, a 22% year-over-year growth rate is a massive rebound from the sales crater they experienced there a couple of years ago.
It is a great rebound on paper.
But Wall Street wanted $19.5 billion. I mean, Apple is fighting a brutal ground war over there against local manufacturers who are flooding the Chinese market with aggressively priced foldable phones and native AI features.
Yeah, the local competition is fierce. But beyond that localized competition, there is a mechanical headwind suppressing that international revenue before it ever even hits Apple's balance sheet.
Right, the FX headwinds.
Exactly. The CFO explicitly called out FX headwinds or foreign exchange headwinds as a major drag on their top line.
Let's look at the mechanics of that for a second, because it's a massive wealth destroyer for multinational companies, and it's a great concept for our listeners to understand.
Yeah, it's crucial. So imagine you're selling a MacBook in Europe, right? The retail price in euros might stay exactly the same year over year.
Okay, so the European customer isn't paying any more or less.
Right. But because the US dollar is currently functioning like a wrecking ball against global currencies, it's incredibly strong. So those euros convert back into significantly fewer dollars when Apple repatriates the cash to the US.
Wow. So they are losing unit sales. They are literally just losing billions of dollars to currency conversion math.
That is exactly it. The CFO noted this dynamic erased about 2.5 percentage points of growth this quarter, and they're forecasting another 2.5% drag for the upcoming September quarter.
That is brutal. I mean, when your baseline revenue is over $100 billion, a 2.5% haircut represents literal billions of dollars just evaporating into the exchange market.
Poof, gone.
So if the services engine is facing regulatory throttling in Europe, and the international revenue is being eaten by a strong dollar everywhere else, Apple has to engineer a new way to squeeze more revenue out of their domestic loyal customer base.
Which brings us to this massive shift in their consumer strategy. They want to change the fundamental concept of owning a device.
Yes, the newly announced Apple Upgrade program in the U.S.
Right, partnered with CLA. It perfectly illustrates this shift. Allowing a consumer to walk out with an iPhone 17 for like $17.99 a month sounds like a standard financing play, but the financial architecture underneath it is brilliant.
It really is. Because if you're looking at your own monthly budget, you might be realizing the exact same thing Apple has realized. Converting a customer from a one-time $1,000 hardware purchase every 4 years into a perpetual monthly recurring revenue stream that is infinitely more valuable.
Oh, completely. Wall Street loves predictable recurring revenue. It smooths out the balance sheet.
But it's more than just that, right?
Yeah. Beyond smoothing out the balance sheet, it gives Apple complete dominion over the secondary market.
This is the part that blew my mind in the sources.
It's so clever. Traditionally, when you upgrade your phone, you might sell your old device on a third-party marketplace or, hand it down to a relative.
Right. And Apple makes $0 on that secondary transaction.
Zero. And worse, from their perspective, that used phone cannibalizes the potential sale of a new budget device.
But if I'm on the leasing program, I don't actually own the hardware. I have to surrender the physical device back to Apple to get the new model.
Exactly. They capture your new lease revenue, they take physical possession of your perfectly functional 2-year-old iPhone, refurbish it, and then funnel it directly into emerging growth markets like India or Africa.
So they generate a second profit margin on the exact same silicon.
Yep. while actively expanding their global footprint and blocking third-party refurbishers from acquiring any inventory.
It's a totally closed-loop system.
It is.
But, to keep people locked into that loop, they need a catalyst to drive the upgrade cycle in the first place. They need consumers to believe their current hardware is completely obsolete.
And that catalyst is clearly Siri AI and the broader Apple Intelligence rollout.
Definitely. The beta testing feedback we saw in our sources is just glowing. Developers are seeing a profoundly capable, context-aware assistant.
Yeah, it's a huge leap forward. But the key to that capability and the reason it forces a hardware upgrade is the architecture.
Right, because Apple is adamant about processing these advanced AI models locally on the device.
Exactly. They want to preserve user privacy rather than offloading all that computation to a cloud server like everyone else is doing.
Which is great for privacy, but running a large language model natively in your pocket requires a staggering amount of unified memory and neural processing power.
Oh, it's massively computationally heavy. An iPhone 14 simply doesn't have the silicon architecture or the RAM to hold those massive neural weights in active memory.
It physically cannot run the software.
Right. It creates this unavoidable hardware bottleneck. Consumers who want this deeply integrated, highly personal AI experience have literally no choice but to purchase devices equipped with the new A19 or A19 Pro chips, or Macs running the M5 architecture.
It really is a masterclass in engineered obsolescence. They lease you the phone to control the hardware lifecycle, and then deploy an AI system so computationally demanding that it forces a continuous upgrade supercycle.
It's an incredibly powerful flywheel.
But spinning up that flywheel requires building tens of millions of these pocket-sized supercomputers, which leads us directly into, honestly, the most alarming part of this earnings report.
Yeah, the supply chain warnings.
Tim Cook warned of a massive structural supply chain crisis. He specifically called the memory chip pricing market a 100-year flood.
That phrase is just a glaring red flag for component inflation. I mean, you don't use a term like that lightly on an earnings call.
No, you definitely don't.
Building these AI-capable devices requires massively expanding the baseline memory in every single unit. Apple is being forced by unprecedented volumes of DRAM at a time when the global memory market is already heavily constrained.
And Cook stated outright that memory costs spiked aggressively between the March and June quarters.
Yeah, and they are bracing for even steeper prices heading into September.
And the constraint isn't just limited to memory, right? They are hitting a physical wall with the advanced node SoCs, too.
The system on a chip, yeah. The core processors powering the entire system.
For our listeners, how does that physical wall actually work?
Well, we can think of the global silicon fabrication landscape like a highly specialized highway system.
Okay.
There are only a handful of foundries on Earth, primarily TSMC, capable of printing chips at the microscopic nanometer scales that Apple requires.
Right, because making these things is incredibly difficult.
Exactly. Building a new fabrication plant takes 5 years and $20 billion. You can't just spin up extra capacity overnight.
So Apple basically routed demand for 100 million AI-powered supercars onto a single-lane toll road.
That's a perfect way to put it. Because the iPhone 17 and Mac sales exceeded their own internal forecasts, those specific fabrication plants are running at maximum structural capacity.
The foundries literally cannot physically print the silicon wafers any faster.
No, they can't. And when supply is physically capped and demand spikes like that, the toll prices go through the roof.
So Apple is facing skyrocketing input costs across their entire logic board, which directly threatens those 50% gross margins we discussed earlier.
Precisely. To defend those margins without raising the retail price on the consumer, Apple is aggressively hunting for cost reductions across the rest of the bill of materials.
And the sources indicate they are really squeezing their suppliers.
Yeah.
They're pushing LG and Samsung to cut display costs by $15 to $20 per unit.
Yep.
And they're accelerating the phase-out of Qualcomm modems to save another $20 in licensing fees.
Every dollar counts right now. But the most significant structural shift is in their memory sourcing. Apple is reportedly in deep negotiations to integrate major Chinese memory manufacturers into their core supply chain.
Now, I know any conversation about international tech sourcing immediately draws geopolitical scrutiny.
Of course, it always does.
But purely from a supply chain mechanics perspective, breaking up a supplier oligopoly is really the only way to fight a 100-year flood in pricing.
It absolutely is. You have to look at it objectively. The global DRAM market is effectively controlled by just 3 legacy manufacturers.
Right.
That concentration gives those suppliers immense pricing leverage over Apple.
Because where else are they going to go?
Exactly. By qualifying new suppliers, regardless of what country they're headquartered in then, Apple injects competition into the bidding process.
It's just a textbook procurement strategy.
Completely. You increase the number of vendors capable of meeting your technical specifications to dilute the pricing power of the incumbents. It's just business.
But even with those aggressive mitigation tactics, the sheer weight of these supply chain bottlenecks is dragging down their near-term outlook.
It really is.
When the CFO issued guidance for the September quarter, Wall Street was modeling for a robust 12% growth rate. Instead, Apple projected a highly cautious 9 to 11%.
Yeah, that deceleration is the direct mathematical result of the two forces we've outlined.
The FX in the factories.
Exactly. The foreign exchange headwinds are continuously erasing 2.5% of their top-line growth. And the hard physical limits of the silicon foundries mean Apple might simply not have enough advanced chips to manufacture the volume of iPads and iPhones the market is demanding.
So they're leaving money on the table because they literally can't build the hardware fast enough.
Yep.
Navigating this specific intersection of spiking component inflation, maxed out silicon fabs, and rolling out a completely new AI software paradigm. I mean, this is arguably the most complex operational environment Apple has faced in a decade.
I could agree with that.
And it will no longer be Tim Cook's daily responsibility to manage it.
Which is the other huge bombshell from this earnings call. It serves as the transition point. Tim Cook is formally passing the CEO title to John Ternus and moving into the role of executive chairman.
End of an era. Cook's legacy over the last 15 years is fundamentally defined by his mastery of logistics.
He is a supply chain mastermind.
He really is. He took the visionary product ideas of the Steve Jobs era and built a global supply chain capable of delivering them at a scale that pushed the company to a $5 trillion valuation.
It's unprecedented scale.
Just recently, he engineered a $30 billion domestic manufacturing agreement with Broadcom. That secured vital RF components while simultaneously reducing trans-Pacific shipping dependencies.
Right, because Cook is a supply chain architect. John Ternus, however, comes directly from the hardware engineering side.
He's a product guy.
He is. He's the executive who successfully managed the incredibly complex transition of the entire Mac lineup away from Intel processors to Apple's custom silicon.
Elevating the head of hardware to the CEO chair sends a definitive signal about Apple's next decade.
It really does. If the core challenge is integrating vastly demanding AI models into physical devices without melting the batteries or destroying the thermal limits of a fanless phone, you need an engineering mind running the company.
That makes total sense. Ternus will be focused entirely on the thermodynamic and architectural reality of making consumer AI tangible.
Right. And meanwhile, the executive chairman role Cook is assuming will likely mirror the strategy we see with Jensen Huang over at NVIDIA.
Operating as sort of the company's diplomat-in-chief?
Precisely. With the supply chain facing a 100-year pricing flood and the global landscape becoming increasingly fragmented, Cook will spend his time traveling between international capitals and foundry headquarters.
Shaking hands, making deals.
Yeah, he will leverage his decades of institutional relationships to secure the factory capacity and the raw materials that Ternus actually needs to build the next generation of products.
It's a smart division of labor. Let's pull all of these threads together for our listeners. Apple just delivered a massive $109.4 billion quarter, heavily fueled by a strategic lower-cost Mac redesign and immense initial demand for the iPhone 17 supercycle.
They are leveraging localized, deeply personal AI to force a hardware upgrade. And they're utilizing aggressive leasing programs to turn hardware sales into perpetual recurring revenue, all while choking off the secondary market.
It's brilliant. Yet the foundation is under immense pressure. They missed estimates in their highly profitable services sector due to European regulations altering the App Store model. The strength of the US dollar is functionally erasing billions in international revenue.
And most critically, they are staring down severe structural supply constraints in both memory pricing and advanced silicon fabrication, which force that very cautious outlook for the rest of the year.
All of which serves as the backdrop for one of the most significant leadership transitions in corporate history as Tim Cook hands the reins to John Ternus.
It really forces us to ask a broader question about where Ternus is steering the ecosystem. With the aggressive expansion of hardware leasing programs and the integration of highly personalized, context-aware AI that only functions within Apple's walled garden of silicon, are consumers ever going to truly own a piece of technology again?
Wow.
Or is the ultimate goal of the Turnus era to transition the entire consumer base into becoming lifelong captive subscribers to an ecosystem they can never afford to leave?
We are really witnessing this shift from purchasing a tool to subscribing to a reality. You look at a $5 trillion company and assume it's a stable monolith, but the internal mechanics are shifting at breakneck speed. It's definitely something to think about the next time you look at the logo on the back of your phone, or rather the phone you're currently renting from them. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.